Living Local presents Biz Buzz 413 with your host, Jill Munson.
And before we get started with today's episode of BizBuzz 413, a couple quick thank you shout outs.
Cloud9 Marketing Group helps grow small to mid-sized businesses by utilizing digital marketing and social media. Cloud9 Marketing Group. Be accessible, be creative, and get results.
Tiger Web Designs. Thanks for making us look awesome on the World Wide Web. A thank you to my company, Hop More. Confidence coaching and training done differently. And of course, a huge thank you to livinglocal413.org. Welcome to Biz Buzz 413. I'm your host, Jill Munson, and this show is part of Living Local 413's initiative founded by local entrepreneur Bill Cole. He's got this huge mission to fuel local success through innovative strategies, meaningful connections, and really accessible resources. And so we're talking with different people across Western Mass, all of the 413, on a lot of different topics. And we're going to talk to bold entrepreneurs, seasoned experts. We'll talk about, really important topics to business owners, as well as residents. And we'll also talk just to some people doing great things and having great stories. And I'm very excited because today I feel like I kind of got the benefit of both. But I also want to remind everybody that if you're listening and you have an idea or you think your story would be a great story, please share it with us. You can do it on our website at livinglocal413.org/bizbuzz, or you can email me directly at bizbuzz@livinglocal413.org. And so, as I mentioned, I have a really awesome guest today who I'm just getting to know, a new friend, Tom Kegelman, the Executive Director of Home City Development. Welcome, friend, new friend.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am so grateful you're here. And I know you said that you don't want this to be all about home city development, but I do think it's important just so that people understand, because I have been blessed to get to know your organization, not you yet personally as well, but I've gotten to know HCDI, and I don't know that everybody does. So could you just give us a little bit of some, information about the organization so people can have a point of reference?
Sure. It's been around for over 50 years. It was started in 1968 by Chamber of Commerce, getting a bunch of bankers together to work on redeveloping some of the housing that was lacking investment in the Mason Square neighborhood in Springfield. And over the years, they would sort of take turns acquiring and financing renovations. It was a fairly modest work.
Yeah.
And then sometime in the 80s, they began to do rental projects, and they took on a few projects using the newly developed low-income housing tax credit program. And they did a few of those, but mostly they were doing property management for others. And then I came in 2009, and with the mission charged to me by the board of directors to develop a lot more rental housing. And we have since then done a lot of redevelopment work, and we're now up to about 500 units.
Wow.
We currently in the pipeline have 34 units in Palmer, Massachusetts. Did I say Palmer? Pelham, excuse me.
It is okay. All the
Yeah,
P ones start to especially because you're busy
I
and
know.
you're
I
you're
know.
like really all over 413, which is what I
Well,
love. You guys are like
well,
spreading out.
we're we're we are focused on Springfield, and that's where most of our work is. But
Yeah.
we have looked at other opportunities, and I think it's important to understand that um, even though, and we can talk about this a little bit later, it is somewhat easier to build in cities like Springfield. Uh, it is also very important that we not focus entirely in the inner city for these low-income housing projects. So it's very
Right.
important to find outside of the inner city opportunities, and the folks in Pelham were extremely uh, welcoming, and were very interested in trying to develop their first affordable housing project, rental housing project. in a community of only 1,200 people.
I got to know the project that you're speaking of, the Amherst Brook Apartments in Pelham. I was very fortunate. I knew your architect, Kevin Rothschild Shea from Architectural EL, and got to kind of see that. And I think it's fascinating because when you're not in the world that you guys live in development architecture and that, like people just like they don't realize how long a project can take
Yeah,
from, from start to end, but how amazing. I mean, another one, I'm in Springfield, not actually too far from Mason Square. I'm in McKnight, and one of the projects you did in the city that I'm very aware of is the Gemini townhomes. You guys were involved with that one, so
right.
it's diverse. I think, one of the things I wanted to ask you, Tom, is so I wrote this article recently. I work with the Western Mass Economic Development Council, and I wrote an article on housing as a topic, and it was a hard one. I mean, I felt like I could have written my thesis, to narrow down into a LinkedIn article. But there are a lot of challenges, and then there's some unique challenges I think to Western Massachusetts that are different than what we see on our sister side over in Boston. So, from your perspective, as someone who's in the development space, not only from the types of projects you guys are doing, but from what you're seeing and learning and the knowledge that you bring to the table, Tom, what would this is your soapbox. You tell me, what do you think some of those challenges are? Let's start there.
Okay. I want to just roughly go through what I see are the challenges, and they're no different from anywhere else, largely in the whole country. But I think everyone agrees we have a housing crisis in the Pioneer Valley. Some estimates are that we're short by over 20,000 units, and statewide they estimate over 400,000 units. And we all can understand that fewer home means that people who have the means leave the state.
Hmm.
Massachusetts is suffering from a major exodus of people, which is going to have some significant implications when they redo the legislative allocation,
Yeah.
federal allocation of representatives in the next census. But those who can't leave, they crowd into the homes of family and friends, shelters, homeless encampments, tents, and sometimes under bridges. And that is a pretty serious problem for those people.
Yeah.
And with that lack, that deficit, we are producing fewer than 800 homes a year in the Pioneer Valley.
Wow.
And so even as it's growing, the demand is growing by more than 800 units a year. That deficit is getting wider and wider. And I think, we have partly ourselves to blame. We pass well-intentioned laws that empower government agencies to regulate development of housing.
Mm.
And then we require those agencies to work with poorly paid and overworked staff. And that takes a lot of time to work its way through. We also require public input into all our development decisions. But the public who show up at those public hearings are rarely the people who need the housing that is being
Right.
proposed. They're
Right.
invariably the local abutters working hard to protect the value of their most significant asset for most of us. The thing that we invest most heavily in is our home.
Right. Right.
And the best way to increase the value of a scarce commodity, as we all know, is to restrict the production of any more of that commodity. So one's house is worth more when fewer houses are being built. So the homeless, on the other hand, who really need the housing, but they rarely have any input into these permitting decisions. And we see the result of that. We also write housing codes that protect us from every conceivable risk associated with building homes. We add so much cost to the price of construction that many are forced to live in tents and under bridges without even the basic protection of four walls and a roof. It's ironic as we work so hard to protect ourselves from these, the dangers of having not enough means of egress or slightly too hot or too cold water.
Yeah.
And the result is that many people have no hot water and no
Yep.
roof
Hmm.
at all. And
Yeah, and you're
those
not
are,
saying I don't want to interrupt, but you're not saying to give up all standards of building, but to make sure that the standards are achievable and reasonable so that you can continue to build without the slowdown and the cost involved with all. Anyway, go on. Yes. No, that
I
makes a lot
think
of
we have
sense.
to recognize the trade-offs that are implicit in these things.
Mm,
And when there's no significant incentive to build, there's no significant incentive to look at those trade-offs. So one community in the state of Texas, in Houston, they changed their zoning laws so that what was formerly a requirement, um, if I can say this quickly, that if you look at housing codes, they vary depending on the size of the building you're trying to build. And so one
okay.
family is usually a little less restrictive than a two or a four
Hmm.
as it goes up. And what they did was they put the least restrictions on up to 8 units of housing. And that created a huge new um, building boom for buildings with 8 and less units. So there's a there's a need to think creatively about how we regulate ourselves and whether we are in fact regulating ourselves into a box that is not livable or sustainable. And so there's other obstacles that are maybe a little more global. We had the Great Recession of 2008 that just decimated the construction industry, and many builders just went out of business. And when you think about this, it's not just you know, a calculation of interest rates and housing prices. You've got to think about it in terms of a pipeline of a whole ecology of builders and bankers and lawyers and architects and engineers and surveyors and skilled workers, plumbers, electricians.
Right.
If you don't have that team, if you don't have that network, if you don't have that system in place and stably, um, sustainably supported over time, then when you're ready to start building, you don't have the pieces. You
Well, and
can't.
the irony, right, is like the chicken and the egg, right? Because
Mhm.
we're seeing this problem with workforce, and then we're
Yep.
seeing problems with tech, meaning the skilled labor roles, but yet a lot of, like you said, there's this exodus of people because not only the cost of housing, but they leave the area and then they don't come back. So now you don't have all of that pipeline of people like you're mentioning. Yeah, it's interesting when you start kind of pulling it apart, Tom. I'm like, oh wow, this is a beast.
It is. And it's important for us to realize our role in this and not to look to the federal government or even the state government to come in and rescue us with billions of dollars of funding. Now, there have been significant cutbacks in the federal government to providing housing, and the state is trying to make it up, but that's fairly limited. And we need to think about that. But there's many other things we could be doing to unleashing the construction industry. And too often we look at developers as these um, rampant, uh, greedy, um, despoilers of the environment, and certainly of
Right.
that beautiful view you had of that wonderful woodland across the street that's now blocked by this five-story building. So I think we need to really think hard about where we're going and whether, we can afford to be putting all these people on the street. And
Well, and the irony of you saying that too is like I think about, and I'll try to remember if I can to include a link. But if not, people can uh, probably just go to my LinkedIn and find it. But when you guys did Amherstbrook, I mean, here you are in Pelham. I mean, Pelham is gorgeous. I mean, the Amherstbrook apartments literally sit on, I think it's like a nature preserve. Like there's like a brook, thus the name, and it's beautiful. There's like lots of greenery, and the building itself, when Kevin designed it with the teams, it was structurally designed to try to replicate as much possible as could be done. And, I think so. There is that mentality a lot of like, the idea that, these, whatever it is, whatever advancement is going to happen is going to ruin the existing. And it's like, yes, but sometimes it also enhances the existing. And that's not just in housing. I mean, we're seeing it in AI, right? Everybody's, oh, AI, AI. It's like, yeah, AI can be scary, but AI can also be great. New housing, new development can be scary, but it can also be wonderful because at the same time, that person that doesn't want this new place is the same person who's like, well, I was at the corner the other day and there was someone asking, for change. And it's like, well, if that individual doesn't have a home, if they're unhoused, I'm sorry, but they have to ask, so it's again, it's very complicated. Tom, what I want to do, I want to make this a two-parter. So for those people who are listening to Living Locals Biz Buzz 413, I'm so excited by this topic that I don't want to let Tom go. So I'm gonna pause here. And if all you wanted to do is hear about the problems, then you can just not even tune back in. But if you want to hear about some of Tom's ideas of how we can move things forward and some of the potential solutions, not that there's easy fixes, because there's not, but he has some ideas. I have a couple more questions, and we're going to get into that on the flip side, part 2 of talking with Tom from Home City Development about housing in the 413, right here on Biz Buzz.
Biz Buzz 413 was brought to you by Living Local.